world, and welcome to The First Line, a show where we discuss all things sports, both professional and collegiate. My name is Massimo Marcano, and I'm here today with my good friends Michael Zingroni and Taylor Snyder. How are we doing today, gentlemen?
Doing great. It's a great time of year. NBA and NHL trade deadlines are slowly creeping up. We got a lot of rumors going on, a lot of other things to talk about too, so we got a great show ahead.
Yeah, busy week in sports, a lot of headlines turning heads, a lot to talk about. Should be a fun show. Looking forward to it.
All right, it's going to be a great show tonight. We're going to have a couple new things to bring up. But first thing, let's get into the main topic. NBA trade deadline is coming up soon. So with the first one we're going to talk about here is DeMarcus Cousins going to the New Orleans Pelicans. He has a contract coming up after the 17-18 season, but this is going to be a pretty good trade right here for the Pelicans, especially seen with Anthony Davis. What do you guys think about this trade right here, and if DeMarcus Cousins can stay with this team?
It's interesting to see. At the end of next year, the following season, his contract's up. His agent has said, depending on the team, he might resign, might not resign. And as I'm just picking up cues, throughout DeMarcus Cousins' time with the Kings and how they lost a lot, his temperament and his attitude, he's almost a head case. Because I think it's because they lose a lot, and the Pelicans lose a lot as well. They pretty much have the same record as the Kings. They have one less win, so they lose even more this year so far. But they're going to win more with DeMarcus Cousins, and now he has Anthony Davis besides Darren Collison?
Yeah.
So it's a fit. Yeah, I mean, so he's got another superstar to play around. He's probably going to have fun with Anthony Davis, I assume. It's going to be a cool fit, but it's just I don't know what the Pelicans are building on. I don't know what DeMarcus Cousins wants to do because you never know what that man's thinking. But it's all about the Pelicans' plan because they gave away Buddy Hield and Tyreke Evans, so do they want to re-sign him after next year? But in my opinion, I think he might get flipped and just finish out this year and might get flipped in a trade and get assets back.
Yeah, I agree. I also building off what you said. It's the long term right now. I mean, you brought in DeMarcus Cousins. That's cool, but you got to think about the guard position. You got to think about Drew Holiday's contract coming up. You got to think about who are you building around because, like you said, Mike, this guy obviously doesn't like losing. Well, you're on the New Orleans Pelicans, and I agree. I think they will get in that 8th spot, but they're not getting anything above that 8th spot because Oklahoma City has that 7th spot locked down pretty hard right now, and you're losing to the Warriors first round. I don't care what you say. The Golden State Warriors are probably going to sweep you. If you win a game if you're lucky. And you just look at their roster and you don't really see much around them besides maybe Dante Cunningham and Drew Holiday. But as I just said, Drew Holiday's not going to be here much longer. So I agree, Mike. It's very interesting. I think they'll have some fun with each other, but it's a superstar and a head case. And now the spotlight's on the head case. What does that do to Anthony Davis' medal? I don't know. I mean, there's question marks everywhere. It's interesting. I did not see this coming, to say the least. But, interesting topic to talk about. We'll have to see how it plays out. I don't know. Maybe this is the savior for New Orleans.
Definitely going to be interesting, and I think it's going to be more interesting to what's going to happen to Sacramento. I think that's going to be pretty bad, but
they're going downhill quick.
Going downhill quick. Let's move on to the next topic. To Jimmy Butler in Chicago. It looks like he's going to be staying there. No trade rumors. Well, there have been some trade rumors, but it looks like Jimmy Butler will be staying in Chicago. What does this mean for the man?
It means he's the man in Chicago. I guess it means he's a superstar that is gonna be he's not as good as Michael Jordan, but he's their Michael Jordan. He's their man. It looks like Rajon Rondo can't stay consistent. Dwayne Wade's older, so Jimmy Butler's the guy. He's a young man, dude out of Marquette. He's a baller and everything. He was thrown around trade rumors around a month ago. Was really like Jimmy Butler's most likely gonna get moved. The Bulls are gonna do a lot of things, but it really shows the Bulls want to keep him and. I agree with it. I think you can really build around him and your Chicago Bulls. You can get some free agents. I think get some draft picks, but it's interesting to see because I want to see how they finish out the season because I feel like they can maybe trade him in the offseason if they don't finish out the season good. But I think it's good for him to stay.
Yeah, I think it's a good fit for him to stay in Chicago, even after all these trade rumors year in, year out. I don't know. I never see him leaving Chicago because it's just like his name's always thrown in there. I agree, though, Mike. It's interesting to see what they can build around him. Michael Carter-Williams is a solid player. Dwayne Wade's old. I mean, Dwayne Wade in his prime was awesome, but I just don't know if he's that guy anymore. Rajon Rondo is just not worked out in Chicago. You got a guy like Doug McDermott, though, solid guy at Creighton.
What's he going to do?
He
might move, too.
Honestly, I don't know. There's a lot of question marks in Chicago, and I was a little shocked. I thought Jimmy Butler was going to go to the Celtics. I thought that would have been perfect. I thought maybe the Bulls could benefit, maybe get a guy like Marcus Smart out of it, a future guy, and I don't know. I just don't see Chicago winning, and I don't see Jimmy Butler moving. So it's just here we are again in Chicago, I guess.
And with that, let's move with the Pacers trying to build around Paul George. What do you guys think about that?
Well, he obviously, and I was talking to Mike about this, expressed interest that, I mean, he's open to the whole idea. He wants to play on a winning team, and he also feels like this whole past year with the injuries and stuff, it's just bad for the team's mental. Obviously, we know the Indiana Pacers haven't been as good. It's definitely interesting though because you got a guy like Jahlil Okafor getting thrown in on the trade talks. Mike, what do you think about that?
That's interesting. It just really started sparking up, in the recent days. His name was really mentioned with the Celtics, Bulls, and so on. He almost had a trade with the Trailblazers before they traded away Mason Plumlee. But going back to the point, Paul George was to play for a winning team, and getting Jahlil Okafor could help. But it's also questionable because you do have Miles Turner, the dude out of Texas. He's a good big man. He just made the rookie showcase and stuff in the All-Star game this weekend, and he's a really, really good player. So Jahlil Okafor is not like he can go to the floor or anything, and Miles Turner, what are you going to do with that? But I think Jahlil Okafor can come off the bench for them and be something, and with Jeff Teague, Paul George, and everything, the Pacers could be cooking up something.
Yeah, well, it's also interesting. The Pacers, obviously a lot better than the Pelicans, but they're in this kind of same situation. What's the future here? And honestly, is Paul George really Paul George anymore? You got to think about stuff like that. Even with these injuries do kill. I mean, it's a killer. And you got a guy like Glenn Robinson III just won the dunk contest. Shout out to him. That was a shocker.
That was a shocker.
You got guys like Al Jefferson still at the center position. Jeff Teague, Mike, I can reiterate what you're saying, go on and on. The bottom line is the Pacers are still the Pacers as long as they keep Paul George in there. I mean, that's the bottom line.
All right, and with that, let's move on to the next one. Derrick Rose potentially going to the Wolves. There's some rumors going on about there. A potential reunion with Thomas Thibodeau. How do we feel about that, gentlemen?
That's interesting because you just saw everything's
interesting.
Yeah, it's
man.
interesting to say the least. But no, Zach LaVine just got hurt.
Yeah.
So they got their athletic guard going, and they obviously don't like Ricky Rubio because we're not going to talk about him now. But his name's been in trade rumors for ever since he's been in the NBA for the most part.
Yeah.
So they're not a huge Ricky Rubio guy, and Derrick Rose, it's something because the Knicks are dysfunctional and they could just use anything but Derrick Rose and Carmelo Anthony and everything but Kristaps Porzingis. But it's Tom Thibodeau reunion too, so you can see why this rumor is going around because they're short a guard, and Derrick Rose, they can probably get him for cheap too because Derrick Rose, he's only averaging 17.7 points per game. It's not like he's killing it like he was in his previous years with Chicago. But a nice little Tom Thibodeau reunion would be something to watch. I can see D Rose in a Timberwolves jersey for sure.
Yeah, but there's only one problem. Like the Timberwolves suck. I mean,
that's true.
You gotta look at the bottom.
But they got building pieces though, man. Just wait 3 years and it'll be good.
Sorry to come in harsh, and listen. Actually, I'll give them some leeway. They are only 3 games out of that 8th spot in the Western Conference. The Western Conference is basically just kind of up for grabs this year. I don't even know what's going on over there.
The 8th spot's always up for grabs.
However,
It's just whoever finishes closest to 500.
Here's why I like Derrick Rose in Minnesota. You got a guy named Karl Anthony Towns at center, who I still love, who I still think is the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Oh,
in my
he's
opinion.
great, man.
I think he's fantastic. Ricky Rubio, I think he can dump him, get someone nice. And I look at Lance Stevenson, I look at Brandon Rush, I look at Zach LaVine when he comes back, Chris Dunn. They're solid.
They got a roster to build on. Just give them time.
It works. I'm telling you, it works. Minnesota, do it.
All right, so the Washington Wizards in the Eastern Conference are looking to improve around their depth. Looking at Andre Drummond at the Detroit Pistons. What are you guys thinking about that?
Well, his name just low-key just popped out as a trade possibility, and it's weird because the Pistons are struggling, and they could look to move a piece to add some pieces to build on. So that could be a possibility because the Wizards have some people they can trade in. They can make the cap work. They don't have. It's not like they don't have any cap space, and they could use it. They can trade away, Marcin Gortat, some draft picks, Kelly Oubre maybe can go to the Pistons and get Andre Drummond over. So that could be a good fit. Andre Drummond, Bradley Beal, and John Wall. That could be something interesting.
Well, it's interesting because on one side you look at the Pistons and they're in the 8th spot, and you would think, why would you trade Andre Drummond when you're playing for a playoff spot right now? But then on the other part, you got to think about the Detroit Pistons, and they got to be honest with themselves. We're not getting anywhere even if we get that 8th spot. So I think this is not a bad move. Listen, the Pistons have not been the Pistons in the past 5-6 years, and I think Andre Drummond's a solid player. I mean, we've seen what he did at UConn and all that, but still, it's just, I think if you're looking at long term, which they very much should be, this is a solid move. And him going to the Wizards right now are really
Wizards
cooking.
at third in the Eastern Conference.
Third in the Eastern
man.
Conference. They're tough at home. And like you said, Bradley Beal, John Wall, Andre Drummond, hello, here we
That
go.
could be
Martin
a good fit.
Gortat. Oh my god.
Another name I'd like to see go to the Wizards. What about Nick Young? The
coming back to Washington.
The Lakers.
Welcome back.
Yeah, they could use some pieces. They have a trade that's up in the air right now, but it looks like it's gonna happen. Corey Brewer in a first rounder for Lou Will. So Lou Will's Lewis Williams about to go to the Rockets.
Lou Will.
So, he will go to the Houston Rockets, and then
Yeah, so Nick Young making a Wizards return, add some depth to that bench, and, give him another shooter come playoff time that can make some threes for you, and he's a fun guy. Who doesn't like Swaggy P?
Yeah, and all of a sudden, here go the Lakers. What are the Lakers doing if they're giving away Nick Young and Lou Williams, and you're bringing in Corey Brewer, who's aging for a first-round pick. What's the whole Laker mentality here? It's interesting, and I like Nick Young coming back to the Wizards, especially right now, because although I'd like to give credit to guys like Clarkson and D'Angelo Russell in Los Angeles, I don't see him doing much. So I think both of these moves just came out of nowhere, but they're both so realistic. I don't know, man. I like them both. It's a good fit.
In the final trade of the day, let's talk about the Celtics linked to a possible Blake Griffin trade. Guys, what about that?
Well, I mean, yesterday it was Jimmy Butler, a week ago it was Jahlil Okafor, so I don't really know what to expect anymore.
Celtics are getting something, maybe. We think.
Hopefully they'll get something. I think right now, if you're the Boston Celtics and you're looking at a guy like Blake Griffin, do you think that's really going to benefit a team? I mean, you are fighting for that first place spot in the Eastern Conference. But if you look at the Boston Celtics with what they have is bringing a guy in like Blake Griffin who really, he's been good this season, don't get me wrong, but Blake Griffin's been on the decline in my opinion. And the Clippers are in the 4th spot in the Western Conference right now. That's a big thing to keep in mind. That's a big incentive for the Clippers to keep him in there because we've expressed this year the Clippers were mad. They said this is going to be their year. They've struggled making it with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin. And now the possibility of him coming over to the Celtics, it's definitely realistic. I don't see it going through. That's my final answer, by the way. I just don't see it going through because
me neither, honestly.
I don't think the Celtics would be willing to give up guys like Marcus Smart or guys like Jay Crowder.
I just don't like the fit either, in my opinion.
Yeah, just to gamble on a guy like Blake Griffin, bring him into Boston. Let's be real. He'll be for 2 years.
And he's another hothead. He's another hothead.
He'll be here for 2 years, Mike, and then we'll dump him for a couple draft
And he's not
picks.
even that good.
No.
He's more average than we think.
Listen,
we can get into that to another time. I don't want to go in here and
I don't think they're going to do it, and I don't think they should do it. Because if you look at the Boston Celtics, they should not be looking at a guy like Blake Griffin.
I would like them with Jahlil Okafor. I mean,
Listen,
that was a good.
I'm all for Beantown getting the superstar, but hey, we got Isaiah Thomas. Remember 3 years ago we said we need that superstar? I feel like we found our superstar.
And you
right
have
here.
Al Horford too. People don't remember that.
I mean, we got Al Horford in the offseason. Remember there was that whole thing with the Atlanta Hawks getting him, and you still got future guys like Demetrius Jackson at the point guard position in Notre Dame. I just don't, Blake Griffin, please stay in La La Land. I don't want you coming to Boston. I'm sorry, man. It's just not going to work out. However, maybe off-season time, that's another topic because you got to think about who's coming up with the contract, especially Marcus Smart.
This NBA offseason is going to be fun.
It's tough,
It's going to be fun.
All right, with the fun NBA trade deadline. But now, gentlemen, we can finally take a breath. NHL. We only have a couple things to talk about here. There are a couple interesting things here. We have the Colorado Avalanche with Gabriel Landeskog, who might get traded. What are you guys thinking about that?
Well, the Avalanche aren't good. They're very bad, to say the least. They only have 35 points. They're still the only NHL team not to reach 40 points yet, and that's bad because we're closing on the last 20 games of the season very shortly. So they are not a good team, and they could really they need to trade their young guys. Joe Sakic coming as a GM. I think he's smart by putting him on the block because you have Nathan McKinnon. He's your superstar. You build around him, but keeping Gabriel Landeskog and another name we'll get to later, Matt Duchene, really won't help you. You need to trade, get pieces, build for the future. And Gabriel Landeskog, he's a solid player for whoever wants to get him. I can see a team like the Bruins or the Kings, and maybe even the Minnesota Wild get him. Another extra second line forward, another top 6 forward who can get you some goals. While he's only had one 60-point season in his career, hey, he's pretty solid. He can help a team out.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I think he's young, and I think he's very talented, and it does hurt to dump a young guy off, especially when you bring in a guy to a system and you just got to dump him off like that. It hurts, man. But you still look at this roster and the possibilities they could maybe get for Gabriel Landeskog. I still like Nathan McKinnon at that center position.
Oh, he's a monster.
Very solid.
He's very underrated because he's with a bad team.
And Matt Duchene, can't forget about Matt Duchene, man. Matt Duchene can do some stuff. I mean, you get Matt Duchene a good night, he's gonna play. The Colorado Avalanche, I don't know what's really going wrong exactly. I mean, you look at...
They just don't have talent, man.
They don't have talent. They brought in Jerome and Ginla for that whole veteran experience. That's not quite working out. Jerome and Ginla's getting old. I mean, so is Jaromir Jagr, but just Jerome and Ginla, I feel like injuries have kind of plagued him a little bit. Calgary took a toll on him. I think the Avalanche are a good place for him to settle down and retire. I think he'll be done within the next 1 or 2 years, just my opinion.
Yeah.
Much as I love the guy. And then you look at Tyson Barrie on defense. I mean, it's just it's interesting. And Mike, what else if not Gabriel Landeskog, what else could they give away right here? I mean, realistically, if you're trying to throw in a couple guys here, who else are you trying to throw in if you're trying to get an extra player?
Well, and another name to look at, Matt Duchene, another forward, their center. I like Matt Duchene. He's coming off a 30-goal season, and there's teams close to the Metro and maybe the Montreal Canadiens, but the Islanders are a team that they really like Matt Duchene. They're heavy into it. They're trying to get him, and that can be a good fit because the Islanders are on the cusp of the playoffs, and they can use that extra scoring edge. As I said, he's coming off a 30-goal season. Maybe in the Philadelphia Flyers, they need some scoring bad.
Yeah.
I know
Definitely.
they need it really bad, so
He
they
would
can
complement
they
that
can
well.
make a move.
Drew up there. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean they can definitely make a move as a top 6 forward, and I heard a name the Montreal Canadiens might exchange him and some extra things with David Desharnais.
Yeah.
So who knows? And another team, I'm just naming teams off right now, but sorry, I'm trying to get us all off my chest. But the Carolina Hurricanes have a young blue line, and the Avs are very interested in it, so that's another possibility for him. So
I could see him in the Carolina Hurricanes.
I mean, yeah, so,
especially the Carolina Hurricanes.
and I
similar situation.
and
just
I
different
think the
conference.
Avalanche are smart. Joe Sakic is smart because you see all these names. I just mentioned 7 names with the Colorado Avalanche forwards. Only 2 of them are Western Conference teams.
Yeah.
So that's smart. They're trying to get them to the Eastern Conference if they're trading them at all, and they're going to get good pieces.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I do actually like the idea of the Carolina Hurricanes because Matt,
That
Duchesne,
could be a good fit.
I think it fits in very well, especially Carolina. It's so many
With
question
Jeff
marks.
Skinner and
so
stuff?
many question marks in Raleigh right now. They need something bad, and I think that fits well. And
I mean, they're still in striking distance of the playoffs,
maybe
though.
the Avalanche could scheme something out of this. I think right now the Colorado Avalanche, you just know you're not making the playoffs.
I would trade both of them if I were the Avalanche. I would trade both of them and just
You
just inhale a lot
Yeah.
of stuff and try to sort it
No,
out
you
later.
got to sit down and you got to say, hey, we got 2 possibilities right now. What can we get for it? If we play our cards right, we can build a team right now because this is not an untalented team. It's just not a great system and it's not good chemistry. And as we all know, it hasn't worked out.
I think Matt Duchesne will end up with the Islanders, though.
You
I
think
really do.
all
I
said
think
and done?
I think he'll be in the Metro with the
I just
Islanders.
think so, just because it's the New York Islanders and it's going to be way
I've-
more of an incentive.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, Islanders are fighting for a playoff
I feel
spot.
like they'll definitely make a move.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely to the Islanders.
About that.
Here, the Vancouver Canucks are with Ryan Miller. What are you guys thinking about that guy?
Well, I mean, Ryan Miller has had a very, very long career. It's hard to look at him in any other uniform besides a Buffalo Sabres uniform. Right now, the Vancouver Canucks and Ryan Miller.
Very weird.
It's very weird because if you're the Canucks, what are you really playing for right now? You're not winning the Stanley Cup this year. Goalies are winning you games, and Ryan Miller's been solid for the most part. But you think about if they were to trade Ryan Miller, or if they were to, possibly lure him for another player, who are you going to dump him off to? I mean, really, who needs a goalie who has one goalie issues and who's going to gamble on a guy like Ryan Miller at the age he's at? I mean, we've seen him. He's been in the NHL, like I said, for a long, long time. He's still got solid numbers, but I'm in firm belief that you shoot top right corner on him every single time, you're going to score. We saw the Philadelphia Flyers exposed him the other night.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
it's,
did. They exposed him the first time they played
Yeah.
him too.
so, I mean, Mike, what do you think? What are you doing with them if you're getting rid
Speaking
of
of the Flyers, I'm mentioning the Flyers again. I want everybody to get the Flyers because they're really bad right now. But back to the point, Ryan Miller and the Flyers have been linked earlier in the season when Steve Mason was struggling and even when Michael Neuwirth was hurt. That the Canucks can maybe move Ryan Miller because the Canucks are not that good. They do not need Ryan Miller. He still has a .917 save percentage, which is solid.
Yeah.
It's
not-
definitely serviceable.
it's
And
not
a
great
team like the
numbers,
Flyers
but,
could use him. And we'll say the Islanders again. The Islanders could use a goalie too. And a team, I'm just thinking, they're in the Western Conference. They're fighting for the playoff spot, the Winnipeg Jets.
I could
They can
totally
do
see
something.
him going to Winnipeg. I think that'd be a great place for him to end his career, man. Winnipeg Jets fans are awesome. They're
Oh, I love the
passionate about
Winnipeg
their
Jets. They
hockey
got
up
some
there.
swag,
They're
too.
passionate about their hockey.
Yeah, but I think he'll definitely get traded. I think if the Canucks are smart, they'll trade him because they don't need to re-sign him. He's up for contract after this year. You don't need to re-sign Ryan Miller. Just try to trade him. Just get something. Just get
Yeah.
something for him.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I agree, Mike.
Well, let's move on to Tampa Bay Lightning, and we have Ben Bishop. What about him?
For the American-born guy, well, he's nice. I like Ben Bishop. He's a big guy. He's struggling this year. He has a 2.6 goals against us. Well, it's all because of Steven Stamkos is hurt. When you have your captain hurt for pretty much the whole year, you're not going to do good. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting to see because they got a young goalie, Andrei Vasilevsky. He's got pretty much identically the same numbers as Ben Bishop. He's
Solid.
another big goalie, but he's solid. He's young. The Lightning really like him. And just like Ryan Miller, Ben Bishop's up for contract after this year. So it's all about the contract. Because do you really need to re-sign him when you have this young guy like that? So you don't need to spend a lot of money on the goalie when you already have one. So you can disperse it at defense or offense or whatnot. So really, it's best for him to trade him. And the teams I mentioned with the Canucks, those are teams I think Ben Bishop can go to too. The Flyers make sense because C. Mason, Neuwirth, they're both really bad. So that's another one. The Winnipeg Jets. And so it's interesting what Lightning are going to do because they're not that good. But as soon as they get Steven Stamkos back, they'll be good.
Yeah.
But he can never stay healthy. So they need to move some pieces around. They can move some pieces on the defensive end too. But I think Ben Bishop's a big candidate to move. Trade
Yeah,
deadline.
no, I think at the end of the day, trade him. Want to know why? Because I agree. Andrei Vasilevsky is
Yeah.
just very, very,
Very
solid.
hard
also.
name.
I've actually been watching him all season. So it's funny you brought him up, Mike. I watched him when he played the Washington Capitals. I watched him very closely because I like watching young talent, especially at the goaltending position.
Oh, hey.
It's hard to really take a gamble on Ben Bishop when you got a guy like Andre because he's so solid and he's so young.
He's young. Yeah,
And Ben Bishop, while he has had a bad season, let me hear it. Let me defend you for a second here, Ben Bishop. You're still solid anywhere you go. So if you're a free agent, the Lightning can get a lot for him. And there are teams who have goaltending problems. Mike, it's funny about the Philadelphia Flyers.
And there's teams that are willing to spend money to fix those
Steve
goaltending
Mason's
problems.
not your long-term thing in Philadelphia, so you got to look at Ben Bishop or Ryan Miller. I like Ben Bishop over Ryan Miller easily. I pick him if you're trying to pick him up as the Flyers. That's interesting. And like you said, Mike, I mean, the Winnipeg Jets are always a candidate. Ben Bishop will fill
They need a
really
goalie,
well.
and they have a solid roster. They just need a goalie to make their team better.
Yeah.
And for the last but not least, let's talk about the St. Louis Blues and defensive player Alex Pietrangelo, who was actually recently hurt. Taylor, start off with you here.
Well, it's interesting because and everything is just quite interesting as Mike says, but it really is because the St. Louis Blues are interesting. Last season, the St. Louis Blues, in my opinion, were going to win the Western Conference and possibly the Cup. I loved that team last year, and I still like that team. You got a guy like Alex Pietrangelo. I mean, you know, he's still good. He's still solid. I really, really like him to move to maybe a team like Calgary or maybe a team like Minnesota. Minnesota's in a playoff, right? Minnesota's in first place
Minnesota
right
can use
now.
another thing.
Minnesota could totally use him, and I mean, it's interesting to see. We just talked about the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay Lightning are also a candidate. Like you said, Steven Stamkos has been hurt. Maybe they pursue him. Maybe they dump him off after the end of the year, get something nice for him. Mike, what do you think?
I think he's another candidate from the Western Conference to come over to the Metro and just make this division even more stacked.
Yeah.
I think he ends up with the New York Rangers.
You like him, the Rangers?
I can see him in the Rangers. You know, they like making defensive moves. Come and trade that line. They've done it recent years. You know, they made a trade with the Predators 2 years back involving Kevin Kline. But back to the point, I feel like he can definitely go to the Rangers. They can use a defenseman. And the name that the Rangers seem they want to kind of dump off is Rick Nash. He has a 7.8 cap hit. Yeah. You know, he still has a lot of years, and honestly, he's not that good anymore. He's lost a step. And Alex Pietrangelo, he's 27. He's young. He has had 24-plus minutes per game in the last 6 years. Yeah. So, I mean, for a defenseman, that's big. You know, he plays a lot of minutes. You know, he can play on a power play, and he play 5-on-5. He can kill penalties for you. So I think the Rangers could really add him because, you know, they need to stock up for, you know, a deep Metro run. Well, you know, as any Metro team does.
And I agree, Metro. If not the New York Rangers, I still look at a team like maybe the Carolina Hurricanes, obviously struggling right now in the Eastern Conference. That's always a possibility, and the Devils too. I could actually easily see him going to the
I can see a Metro move for Alex Pietrangelo.
Although it's funny you bring the New York Rangers up because I do think that he does deserve to be on a competitive team, and he's going to flow well with them. So I think at the end of the day, it's either going to be the Rangers or a Western Conference team like the Wild or Flames. That's just my opinion, though.
With that, let's move on to our final main topic of the day, the second part, Path to the Draft, NFC West. Last week we covered the AFC West. Let's move. Last year we saw the NFC West kind of fall victim to the Seahawks being like the only good team. The Cardinals fell apart with Carson Palmer
and
being a little bit inconsistent. Yeah, Jeff Fisher was back to his old damn 7-9 self. Jared Goff not really showing the promise, but then again, neither was the rest of the offense. Let's talk about the 49ers first, though, who were obviously just the worst team.
They're bad.
Yeah, they were.
Well, thank God the Cleveland Browns are there, so they're not the worst team.
Yeah, yes. Really. So let's talk about this QB situation first, because we're not going to talk about Blaine Gabbert and the other quarterback who I will not name to save myself from bloodlust
Christian
and
Ponder
rage.
Is a savior.
Christian Ponder is a savior. He's he's a good
he's
kid.
A saint, man.
He's all right. He's a good guy.
He's a good stringer.
We're talking about Tony Romo. We can talk about Matt Schaub. What's going on here?
I look at this 49ers situation, and when Kyle Shanahan got hired, you know, after the Super Bowl, when it's like made it official, you know, a name that could follow him, you know, one name was Jacob Tamme, but talking about quarterbacks, Matt Schaub, he was the backup with the Falcons. I'm assuming he knows the system because he was the backup for the Falcons for a whole year. So I think he can come over, be the bridge, because it would make sense for him to be the bridge, because they don't have anything right now. They need a draft. And this quarterback draft right here, the quarterbacks in this draft upcoming aren't that good, so you really might not find a franchise guy. So Matt Schaub can just be that bridge because the 49ers are very bad. They're nowhere close from winning. So I think Matt Schaub wouldn't hurt you because you're not going to come close to winning. You're not going to win this division. You're not going to beat the Seahawks. You're not even going to do anything in the NFC. So Matt Schaub for a year, bridge to a quarterback, I think is a good plan.
Yeah, I agree, Mike, with the whole Matt Schaub thing. Also, I just really don't see Tony Romo. That's, a name that we're going to throw in there. I don't see Tony Romo going to San Francisco just because I don't think it's really quite the system. I don't think they're going to have really enough to get him to sign there, let alone, like, even enough to, like, get him in a trade or anything like that with Dallas. So I agree. Matt Schaub's definitely a solid option. Matt Schaub's not like fantastic, but he's still solid. And I agree, Mike. He's got experience in the league, and you really just need experience right now if you're the San Francisco 49ers. You got a really young and, I'm going to say it, untalented team right now.
Yeah, it's untalented. It's not talented.
And I mean, you look at like free agent quarterbacks. If not Matt Schaub, I mean, Case Keenum in Los Angeles. Obviously, we know Jared Goff's the guy there. You could take a chance on him, but really, it's not much better than Blaine Gabbert. So they're in a gridlock. Excuse me.
Well, we saw right now they got offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan and the new general manager John Lynch. So that's definitely going to be a good pair, especially for the offense. But let's talk about these draft needs real quick. We talked about quarterback. Let's talk about wide receiver, which we thought was a pretty big hole to fill out. And let's also talk about the linebacker position for this 49ers team.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, they have the second overall pick. I don't think they'll pick Mike Williams second overall. I feel like they can go better. It all depends on what happens. If the Browns somehow maybe pass up on Myles Garrett, they can draft Myles Garrett at linebacker. They can use some D-line help. Maybe Derek Barnett out of Tennessee. He's a name I could throw in the defensive line. Wide receiver. I mean, they have the second round pick, second overall pick, excuse me. So I think that they could wait to the second round and third round and maybe see if a name like John Ross will slip down to them in the second round, or a D.D. Westbrook out of Oklahoma. So they have a lot of options they need to build. They need to take their time with their draft picks because they really need to think about this. And another name, Jonathan Allen out of Alabama. So I mean, they can do a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need three things right now. You need a quarterback, obviously, like the experienced quarterback, but I don't think it hurts you to get a rookie quarterback for security right there. But you got to be careful because if you look at the San Francisco 49ers roster, they got Thaddeus Lewis, Christian Ponder, Blaine Gabbert, Colin Kaepernick is still hanging on there. I don't know what that's all about. But anyway, you got a lot of quarterbacks. You don't want a quarterback overload. One guy I do look at is the cornerback out of Ohio State, Marshawn Lattimore. He was really
nice.
really
and
tough
Ohio
this
State had a
year.
good, secondary.
He
so
was
he's
very
good.
tough. And also, Mitch Trubisky out of North Carolina. I mean, I don't know if he's deserving of the second overall, but hey, maybe like you said, Mike, if not John Ross, they catch him later in the draft. And wide receivers are really non-existent in San Francisco right now. So maybe you look at a guy like Mike Williams out of Clemson. Mike Williams is very solid. And hey, listen, this is totally optimistic as fuck, but Corey Davis, I mean, the wide receiver out of Western Michigan, he's also a solid option. Western Michigan is a great team.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to this Rams team, what we were just talking about.
How bad they are.
Let's talk about the new coach. Let's talk about what they got to do on offense to help out Goff, Gurley. I think they got to get this new wide receiver situation set up. Tavon Austin is former 8th overall pick.
West Virginia.
Is underperforming. Kenny Britt is set to possibly become a free agent. What are you guys thinking about all this right here?
Well, I mean, the first thing you want to talk about, you said Jared Goff was the first thing you mentioned, Mass?
Yeah.
I mean, Jared Goff, in my opinion, is the future. I like Berkeley guys. I like him a lot. I'm a little biased towards him for some reason. I don't know why. I think he's solid, and that connects to the point of Case Keenum. I think he'll go somewhere else. But besides the point, I think Jared Goff, 3 years, he'll be solid. I think I like him in Los Angeles. A lot of questions on offense for them, as we were talking about before the show, though, Mike. I mean, the LA Rams are in an interesting position. One, they got to share a stadium with they do not have to share a stadium. They have to share a city with the newly renowned Los Angeles Chargers. That's also something to look at. This was once their city. Now they got that to deal with. A lot of fans, kind of tied between. So it's just sort of confusing time in LA. I don't see him doing much this season. Tavon Austin's been underperforming for the most part. Mike, what do you think? I mean, if they're going to draft anyone in this upcoming draft, who do you think they go with first?
Well, I mean, it's tough because you don't have a lot of draft picks because you just traded them all for Jared Goff. So that's another thing. They were at the 15th pick last year. They traded all for Jared Goff. I believe they don't have the first round pick this year.
They don't have a first round pick.
And
it's no first round pick. What first round pick?
That's bad because your team is very bad. You need to build an offensive line because Todd Gurley is a very good running back. Very, very good running back. Yeah. So if you need an offensive line so he can run because they couldn't block anything. They couldn't even block the San Francisco 49ers who are bad. So they couldn't block anything. Their defense is solid. They got Aaron Donald. They got some secondary pieces. Alec Ogletree. They got a solid defense. Nothing special. Nothing's gonna shove it in your face. But it's definitely a good defense, and they just need to worry about offense. But it's just they need those picks. But it's just they don't have them.
Offensive line. Get an offensive line because you got Todd Gurley.
They need that first.
Treat the man. Get him an offensive line.
Yeah, treat the man.
All right. Let's talk about the Cardinals here, who actually, out of all these other teams, I think could actually be good next year. We got to depend on the potential of Carson Palmer. Do they need a future quarterback? The Palmer Fitz saga, is that over, or do you think Fitz needs a new quarterback to work with?
Well,
We know David Johnson is definitely that guy, but we got to figure out what's going on with this wide receiver core, especially after Michael Floyd just left.
Well, obviously, Matt, that goes without saying. David Johnson's the dude. He's your running back, 100%. But like Josh Brown at the wide receiver position, I don't know what it is with me and the wide receivers in this conference, but I do really like them going for a wide receiver in this draft. It all just depends who they can get. I mean, you got to look at where they're drafting and who they got now with Josh Brown. Larry Fitzgerald's getting old, obviously, as we know. How much longer is he going to be there? I think the first thing you're going for here is a wide receiver. And maybe a guy like Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Because like you said,
Yeah,
Carson,
later rounds, they need something.
I'm sorry, Carson Palmer. I know it's been a really rough NFL career. I don't know how much longer you really got in you, though, buddy. I'm really sorry. I respect you. You came out of USC and all. But, like, I just think you look at maybe Baker Mayfield as a potential option or a guy like Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. And I think the big thing, though, right now is wide receiver because I think Carson Palmer can get you another season. You need to worry about those wide receivers because the offense was very poor this year.
Yeah, their wide receivers were the reason their offense was bad because they had Larry Fitzgerald. He was a 1,000-yard receiver. David Johnson was their second leading receiver. He had almost 900 yards.
Yeah.
But after that, they had no one else over 600 yards.
Yeah.
You cannot be a solid playoff team, a solid Super Bowl contender, and beat these good teams with production like that coming from your receivers. We saw it with the Eagles. They didn't even have a 1,000-yard receiver, and they're worse. That's why. But you need receivers. They could also use some D-line help. They got Calais Campbell. He's getting older. They got a lot of older pieces on the defensive line. They can maybe add a guy.
Could also use some O-line help. I remember David Johnson was also playing for the 24th ranked offensive line in the season.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah,
still
you
managed
can
to get
imagine
that
him
many
with a good
yards.
O-line. So, I mean, they can maybe use some picks for O-line. That'll be smart, too, get him running wild. But I would worry about receivers because your O-line's okay-ish. Really not, though. But receivers, though, because if you want a future quarterback, you can't have a receiver core like this, especially
No.
after Larry Fitzgerald retires because he's your number one. David Johnson, no, he's your running back.
Yeah. And like I said, I think the very first option, I could totally see him fitting in, but I don't think he'll be available, is Mike Williams at Clemson. I'll bring him up again because he's Mike Williams. And Corey Davis out of Western Michigan. I think that's very actually realistic. He'll still be an option, in my opinion, at that 13th spot.
Oh, yeah.
And he's good, man. You saw what he did. He was that Western Michigan offense, in my opinion. I think
He was. He has. I think he has FBS records
Yeah.
and pretty much receptions and yards.
Oh,
too.
and by the way, I love John Ross on that team. I think he fits in real well with
That's a
Josh
good
Brown.
fit,
You can't forget about Jermaine
They got a lot of
Gresham
speedsters,
in that
yeah.
wide receiver core, and J.J. Nelson. J.J. Nelson's a solid receiver. He's just underperforming a little bit as well. So, a lot of questions. It's all who's available. And I think there's going to be a lot available. It's just who's going to fit in well. In Arizona, you got to play your cards right. You got to be careful. Don't draft a guy like, Tavon Austin who's going to underperform. You need a wide receiver that's going to perform for the long term. So, that's something to look at.
And with the final team, let's move on to the Seahawks. Well, this team hasn't been to a Super Bowl since 2013, but it's not like that's a problem. Not an issue.
That's not an issue.
Don't worry about it. You're still a good team, but it looks like they are on a bit of a decline. Then again, that is with the rise of other teams like the Falcons and other teams were doing good last year as well. But let's talk about the Seahawks team right here. This defensive decline. Richard Sherman still has it, but we saw last year without Earl Thomas, this defensive secondary can struggle without him.
Yeah, that's the thing, because Earl Thomas, this year, he's got hurt a lot. So do you wonder if that's continued? And he's had retirement questions in his head. So is he going to play with full confidence when he comes back? Or is he going to be 100% flying around ready to kill someone? Or is he going to be, a little held back because of his injury? So that's a big question, because the Legion of Boom is not without Earl Thomas. In my opinion, Earl Thomas is the best player on the Legion of Boom. He's a very, very good safety. In my opinion, the best safety in the league. So without him, their defense declines a lot. Their defense goes down a lot. They had a top two defense when Earl Thomas was there. Earl Thomas left, they dropped to 4. While number 4 isn't bad, you still dropped when Earl Thomas left. So give him a full season or underperforming, Earl Thomas, it can get ugly.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that I think about the Seattle Seahawks coming up with this draft right now is the running back position and what they're going to try to get here. You got a guy like Thomas Rawls who can't really quite stay healthy, in my opinion. Christian Michael's still a solid guy. The Seattle Seahawks team, receiving wise, is still pretty solid. Tyler Lockett, he'll come back. Doug Baldwin, when healthy.
They could build on the receiving core, though, in my opinion. They can definitely build.
One guy I kind of like, and he doesn't even have to be a running back. He can get turned into a slot guy at the wide receiver position. I'm not trying to sound biased here. Alvin Kamara out of Tennessee. the whole spotlight on Tennessee was Jalen Hurd, this, Jalen Hurd, that. Alvin Kamara didn't get half the credit he deserved. That guy's fantastic. He fits in perfectly. Seattle's a fast-paced offense. Well, guess what? He's a fast-paced player.
Yeah, I mean, they miss Marshawn Lynch because they don't have the
they
10
don't
bell
have
running
that
back.
guy that can do the receiving and the punch mouth running. You know what I
yeah.
mean? But
They need to build that O-line, though. That's another thing. That O-line was very bad. That's another reason they couldn't run the ball. Not only they don't have a running back, they don't have an offensive line.
Yeah, and I mean, just building off what you said about the offensive line, and you got to have a guy that's going to protect your line. I mean, even Thomas Rawls, like even when he is healthy, he still was struggling out there because the offensive line's been banged up, and it's kind of a common theme in the NFC West actually the past couple of years.
Yeah, offensive lines, man.
But it's funny you bring up Legion of Boom, Mike, because I like Marlon Humphrey, another Alabama guy, cornerback.
that can be a really cool fit.
Yeah.
All right, and with that, we finished our main topics of the day. Let's move on to Minute with Mino. First news, the UConn's women basketball team win streak moves to 101 after a 63-60 victory against Tulane Saturday night. The Huskies, who have not lost a game since November of 2014, have added another victory to their record. Head coach Gino Auriemma's record stands at 980 wins and 134 losses in his career. On February 14th, Orlando Magic power forward Serge Ibaka was traded to the Toronto Raptors. The Magic will receive Terrence Ross and a first-round pick. Ibaka currently averages 15 points a game as well as 6 rebounds and about 2 blocks a season. He looks to make a rebound in his career. On February 17th, Claude Julien was named head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. Julien will replace former head coach Michael Therrien. This is the second time he's replaced Michael Therrien as head coach, with the first time being in 2002. And no, that was not a pun when I meant for Claude, or what's his name, Serge Ibaka. With that, let's move on to everyone's favorite topic, hot topics. Start off with the first running backs in the draft. We have Leonard Fournette at LSU, Dalvin Cook at Florida State, among other names, especially Christian McCaffrey out of Stanford. But let's talk about these running backs. What do you guys think? Who do you think is going to be the most electric? Where do you think they're going to go? Teams like the Bucks, Eagles, Jets, Colts, and Patriots are looking for running backs. What do you guys think? Taylor, start with you.
Well, as far as electric goes, if you're talking about pure speed, power, overall talent, Dalvin Cook, you kidding me, man? Oh my gosh, this guy's a monster. I'm really excited to see where he lands. There's a lot of possibilities. It's interesting Mike brought up the Eagles as a possibility. I like that because if you look at Wendell Smallwood for the future, is that a secure option? Look at how many years Darren Sproles has. You also look at teams who maybe need running backs like the New York Jets. However, I do see Leonard Fournette actually fitting in well with the New York Jets, but that's for another topic. One guy that's going to be super interesting, and I brought him up just a couple minutes ago, Alvin Kamara to Tennessee, because he can be a slot guy or a running back guy, and he's fast and he can play, man. He's got hands. He can run it back. He's aggressive. He's not the biggest guy, but man, he's powerful. Mike, what do you think?
I mean, it's great to see because last year we saw Ezekiel Elliott get taken 4th overall by the Cowboys, and we all know the season he had a phenomenal year, and it's just only fitting that the running back class year after is stacked because every team just saw Ezekiel Elliott and just got so jealous because they want that young running back to build on. Well, now you got your chance. You got Leonard Fournette. You got Dalvin Cook, and you got later picks. You got Christian McCaffrey, who's interesting. Donta Foreman out of Texas. He's really good.
Nice.
And I look at teams like the Bucks, Ravens, and Colts. And those mid rounds to really take some of these players like Dalvin Cook and such.
And you know who I actually look at very, very interesting? The Carolina Panthers. Jonathan Stewart doesn't have very more years left in him.
Yeah, and he's not.
They're going to need a running back, and they got a lot of options. I can see Dalvin Cook fitting in there.
Or I can see Leonard Fournette with the Panthers. I can see him with the Jets too. I can see him in that green.
But one guy that you're kind of ignoring here, Mike. The little white guy out of Stanford. Christian McCaffrey. Where is he headed, man? What do you think?
I think a good fit for him could be the Patriots. If he falls to later first round, you know how the Patriots like that little white guy monster that run around really fast. So, Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield, you can give him some carries. You can put him in the slot. He's electric. You can use him on punt returns. It's definitely a little fit, especially with Deion Lewis. He's been getting hurt and stuff. You don't know this whole situation. I think Christian McCaffrey can be fit in a team like the Seahawks, maybe, who we just mentioned earlier.
Easily the Seahawks or the Baltimore Ravens. I like him in the Baltimore Ravens. Once again, also a guy like Dalvin Cook could easily fit in the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens have had a lot of running back issues ever since the incident. We don't want to talk about that. And it's interesting to see a guy like Christian McCaffrey. I agree, Mike. New England's all about special teams. Great special teams guy. He could fit in real well there. Hey, man, I don't think he's going to be in the backfield, but like I said, he's a slot guy, man.
He's a weapon.
He's
a
a
weapon.
He's
That's
a
all that
weapon.
matters.
And do you mind if New England? What do you need, New England? I mean, what do we really need right now? You know what I'm saying? Why not take a chance?
Yeah.
All right, and let's move on to the NHL now, where we got Jaromir Jagr, who is 45 years old.
He's going along, man.
Let's talk
He's
about
trooping.
this man right here. Mike, why don't you start off?
Well, he's one of the greatest of all times, Hall of Famer. He was a year with the Penguins, and now he's going, switching teams very often, just living on 1-year deals. He's 45 years old, but he's got 34 points this year. He's nothing special. He's not the Jaromir Jagr he was, where you put on the first line and he's gonna get you 100+ points every single year. But he's a top 9 winger. He'll get you some points. He's a good veteran presence. The guys love him. The Panthers locker room loves him, especially with all those young guys. That they have a 45-year a guy that's old enough to be his dad.
Yeah.
Playing with them, and they love him. He's got the mullet back too. I love that. Let's mention the Jaromir Jagr mullet. What a godsend that is. But going back to the point, he's someone that can just the Panthers are a good team, and I feel like he's a good fit on the Panthers. I kind of want to see him stay on the Panthers, finish out his career there, because I feel like he can help them out, especially with all that young talent.
I like him in Orlando, actually, because Sean Thornton's there in that whole, right wing area with him. I like him a lot. Also, you want to know what I also love about him being in there? A guy like Alexander Barkov at the center position, complimenting him. And like you said, Mike, he's old, he's wise, he's been in the game. He's played for half the NHL. He's played for the Devils, the Rangers.
Stars.
He's played for
the Flyers. He's played for the whole Metro,
pretty much. And I like the
old
experience
division.
because right now this Florida Panthers team, they're building up. They're young. They got talent. And a guy like Jaromir Jagr is helping out. I maybe give him 2 more years though.
Yeah, I say
That's
another.
still thunder like that. 2 more years.
I say another year or 2 with the
Yeah.
Panthers. He'll
He'll
keep it going.
retire, though.
He's gonna retire in Sunshine, Florida.
Yeah, Sunshine State is. I think they're
It's
looking
a-
to
it's,
have
a-
him.
it's a great place to
And
retire.
I give him a lot of credit for last year. Remember the
Oh
Florida
man, this is
Panthers?
awesome. I love seeing a 45-year-old going in this, man.
Florida
It's
Panthers
great.
were great last year, and they're still great this year. They're fighting.
They got a roster.
And
For
he's
sure.
got 34 points. He's 45 years old.
45 years old. He was born in 1972.
That's around my dad's age.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
This
Wow.
dude-
And we got a little bit of extra time here. Let's add on an extra one. We'll talk about Paul George. Pacers trying to build around him. What do you guys think his future is going to be like, and what should the Pacers do to make it better for him?
Well, right now, Paul George's future, I think, is in Indiana at the end of the day. It's all about what you're trying to build around him. I mean, like we were talking about earlier on the show, you got Jeff Teague, you got a guy like Glenn Robinson. It's all about how you play your cards, and I think that's the same for a lot of these teams. Paul George wants to be on a winning team. He's clearly stated that he's open to re-signing. Feels like his ego and this whole injury to the leg was a big mental thing for the team. Paul George, he's informed me, but I don't think so. I think you're still the dude in Indiana, but I don't see him going anywhere but Indiana. I like him in Indiana for his entire career just because I think he's a guy, fans like him. I think he likes playing there. They're a solid team. They're not going to win an NBA title, but they're solid. They're competing. I don't really know where you go. I mean, the point guard position's definitely interesting. Jeff Teague, how much longer will he be? Their center position's extremely interesting, actually. Al Jefferson.
Yeah, we got Miles Turner though.
Yeah, and you got to bring, Mike, you want to talk about Miles Turner? You brought him up before the show, the Texas guy. What do you think about that?
So I love Miles Turner, and I like the whole fit. Jeff Teague's having a really nice year. He's on my fantasy team. Shout out to him real quick. He's holding it down.
Yeah.
Jeff Teague's playing really good. Paul George he's coming back from his injury. He's averaging 22 points per game. They got Miles Turner, this great young kid out of Texas. But in my opinion, I feel like the Pacers, we're talking about the Okafor maybe, I feel like they won't pull anything through, and Paul George might leave.
You think?
I feel like there's a chance Paul George might leave.
Do you think Jahlil Okafor and them signing is the defining point? Do you think this is their destiny to basically pursue this guy if they want Paul George here?
I feel like they need something, but for some reason, I just feel like the Pacers won't be able to pull anything out here.
Well,
And
yeah.
I honestly don't see how much will Jahlil Okafor do for you. You already have Miles Turner. What's a backup center going to do for you to make you stay there?
You got to look at Paul George. If they do dump him and they do get a guy like Jahlil Okafor, it depends on who else they're throwing in there. Because one guy I really like is Georges Niang at Iowa State, sticking in at the shooting forward position. So it's interesting.
I mean, and they're right around 500. So I mean,
Yeah.
how good are they really?
No, yeah, exactly.
And with that, let's move on to our final topic of the day.
New segment. Let's get
Wait
it.
a minute. Massimo, how are you doing this to me right now? What happened to the upside and the downside? No, we're changing it now, okay? Whether you like it, no, I'm just kidding. We're going to change it for the night. Take five things you need to know about. Gentlemen, you guys have brought with you facts, statistics, You guys are like scholars right now. I'm pretending I'm like a dumb student. I don't know anything.
All right, let's
Taylor,
let's
I
bring
want you
mathematics
to
school right
teach
here.
me
Taylor.
about the Boston Celtics and how they can overcome the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Well, I'll tell you a couple things about the Boston Celtics. First thing, take five. My take five today is the 5 ways the Boston Celtics can overcome the Cleveland Cavaliers. The first thing is the fourth quarter offense. The Celtics are dynamite at home. It's all about playing in the fourth quarter, and that's huge, especially in the playoffs with teams like Toronto and with teams like Cleveland. I think if the Celtics can average around 25, 30 points in that fourth quarter plus, and if Isaiah Thomas averages the same points, they're good. They're golden. That's my first way they're going to beat him. My second way is over the last 11 games, they rank number 6 both in defensive rebounding and overall defense. If they can stay close to that in those categories, their ratings to win these games will be way more favorable because we look at a guy like Kevin Love and the exposure. I think that's going to be huge. Defensive rebounding, when you play a talented team like Cleveland, comes in huge. My third way they're going to beat them, and this is the defining moment, the Celtics need to win in Cleveland. If they win 2 games in Cleveland, I have them pulling out here with a victory because we see what they do at home. They're 28 at home. I mean, they're unstoppable in the Garden. That's no issue, but we've seen them decline 17-12 on the road now. That's something very interesting to look at, especially in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs. The fourth thing I want to talk about is the mental state of the Cavaliers. LeBron James is obviously very frustrated this season. He's expressed that this is not the Cleveland Cavaliers team of years past. Kevin Love's been banged up. We all know about the knee and what's going on there. It's going to be interesting. Can they expose that? They got a guy like Jay Crowder and Al Horford in that front court who can hang with people like Tristan Thompson. So I think it's easy, very easy to expose this mental state. And my fifth and final thing, as long as they expose that mental state, if Isaiah Thomas plays like Isaiah Thomas, they're fine. Also, you need the bench to step up a little bit because if you look at the bench, I mean, you got a guy like, Demetrius Jackson out of Notre Dame, a young guy. You need him to come up big in these types of situations. You need guys like Gerald Green, fantastic, having a great year. You need him to come up big. Also, you need Avery Bradley to play well because Isaiah Thomas can average 31 a game, but Avery Bradley's got to step up. And Al Horford, veteran leadership. If all that comes together, the veteran leadership, exposure, defensive rebounding, playing well in the fourth quarter, and taking advantage of situations like Kevin Love's injury, the Boston Celtics can walk out Eastern Conference champions this year. Mike, take 5. You're up.
5 things you need to know about the Minnesota Wild. The first place in the Western Conference. But number 1, according to NHL.com, their 4 main team stats. They're 4th in the power play, 10th in the penalty kill, 4th for goal fours, 4th for goal fours, and 2nd for goals against. So they're top 10 in every single major team statistic. That is important. You need a good power play, and you need a good penalty kill, and you can't let teams score against you, and you need to score to win in the playoffs, and they do all of that at a top 10 level, and that's great. Devin Dubnyk, their goalie, leads the league in wins with 32, leads the league in save percentage with a .934, and leads the league in goals against average with a 1.97, and he has 5 shutouts on top of it. This is the most underrated goalie in the league. He needs more buzz, and he, in my opinion, is the best goalie in the league other than Carey Price. Number 3, they got 10 players led by Nino Niederreiter that are in double-digit goals right now. Teams only have 10 players in double-digit goals when they're in when they're in their 70s games and stuff. So the Minnesota Wild can score a lot of points, and they have a lot of goals to go for it. Their head coach, number 4, head coach Bruce Boudreau, has made the playoffs 8 of his previous 9 years coaching with the Ducks and the Caps. He brings experience. He didn't win a cup. He didn't show up to a cup yet, but he brings experience with other than previous coach Mike Yeo. So that's experience for the playoffs. So that's big. That's key, especially in the Western Conference. And another thing, they have a plus 62 goal differential, which is 2nd best in the league. Number 1 is the Caps with a plus 69. No one is within 20 goal differential with him. So that they're in a league by themselves with the Capitals right now, and they're killing it. And with the Western Conference where the Kings are struggling, the Predators are struggling, everybody else is struggling besides the Blackhawks, they can do something. So that's my 5 things you need to know about the Minnesota Wild. This team can make a run right here.
Wow. I am mind blown. And, I'm going to be sure to use that information whenever I debate with my friends at my my hockey and basketball parties that I always have. Dude, I have friends. Just kidding around. With that, we have wrapped everything up. Thank you for joining us on The First Line. My name is Massimo Marchiano, and here with my good friends Mike Zingroni and Taylor Snyder. We wish you a good night. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen?
Go Caps. Keep up the good work. Obviously, playoff time's totally different, but you guys are playing well. Rock the red. Show some love. 7:03 out here.
Yeah, Go Flyers on top of that. They just got to win. They're playing the Caps
Yes,
Wednesday
sir.
night.
Got a
So
big game
got
coming
a
up
big
this
game. They
week.
got an outdoor
Hey,
game
man.
coming up Saturday in
Come
Pittsburgh.
and
I'll
see your
be
brother
there.
with
Your
love.
boy will be in Pittsburgh. But Flyers need to do something. But we're getting to closing stretches and the season's closing. So this is great. I can't wait to finish them out.
All right, and be sure to follow us at TFL Sports Talk on Twitter. With that, we'll see you again next week. Have a good night.